I wonder, do you ever ask yourself what would make your life even better than it is at the moment? Sam, this is really your moment, and I hope that it's a good one for you, especially as you've got all that behind you now, because here you are surrounded by your lovely family and friends, and you've demonstrated to all of us this morning just how much you've learnt with your teacher Dov over the past year and longer. You are blessed with a wonderful memory, like an elephant, to quote your mother. But you are also diligently and, as we saw, hugely enthusiastic, and you bring these qualities of hard work and real interest to your studies. Who else would have done the research, investigated the measurements in cubits, acquired the materials, admittedly not acacia wood, but plywood, which does just as well, and made an ark to scale, complete with horns on its four corners, copper mesh, and its poles inserted into rings on the side of the altar. It was a remarkable piece of design and construction, combining your aptitude for maths and for engineering, which I know you enjoy tremendously. But this altar, and indeed everything surrounding it, the textile coverings for the roof and partitions, the ark and its cover, the menorah, the candelabra, the laver and enclosure, the various ritual items, and the lush sacred vestments of the priests, the precious metals and stones that we use to adorn the tabernacle and the garments, may appear to us rather elaborate, perhaps even over the top. If it was not to demonstrate the wealth and generosity of the Israelites, what was their purpose? After all, only a few chapters earlier, the Israelites have brought their donations of gold for another reason, the building of the golden calf, which led to a violent and punitive end for many of the Israelites who had encouraged Aaron to build it so that they might bow down and worship it. Might there not have been a danger that the elaborate tabernacle built by the Israelites in the desert, the precious metals and stones they offered, so many that Moses has to call a halt to the donations, would lead to some other kind of idolatry, the worship of a place and its objects, rather than the presence it would house? A rabbinic midrash, an imaginative, fanciful elaboration on our text, draws our attention to the gold of the earrings and jewelry donated for the building of the golden calf and the gold of the sanctuary. Let gold be placed within the sanctuary, says God to Moses in this legendary commentary to the Torah, to atone for the gold with which the golden calf was fashioned. So heinous was the sin of the golden calf that it required expiation. How could the people atone for their sin? By giving this same precious metal towards the building of the sanctuary. In this way, said God, I will restore their spiritual health and heal them of their wounds. But the building of the tabernacle isn't only about atonement for Israel's sins. Another reason is given by the commentators for its beauty and its uplifting presence. So forbidding and bleak was the wilderness through which the Israelites made their journey for 40 years, that they needed something to sustain them and lift their spirits as they trudged their way through the desert. Those who were endowed with a heart of wisdom, chokhmat lev, with the skill to be able to design, build, and create, would heal those of lev namuch, a depressed heart. But if the building of a sanctuary whether the Mishkan in the desert, or a cathedral, or a mosque, or a beautiful synagogue like our own, is designed to heal the broken-hearted and to uplift our spirits in bleak times by its aesthetics and beauty. What does that have to do with religion? You might argue that we don't need prophets or priests or rabbis or teachers or philosophers or ethicists to make our life better. Rather, we need artists, painters, poets, playwrights, novelists, sculptors, composers, and musicians. That is the argument of Rabbi Levi Olan in his commentary to this parashah. He says religion is less theology, philosophy, or code of behavior than it is an art. So Moses was right when he took all possible steps to make sure that the first sanctuary was a thing of beauty. In that rough wilderness, people needed something to open for them the possibilities of a better existence. If then religion is an art, who are our true prophets today? Who are the individuals who uncover the truths that we don't always wish to see or hear? In 1937, the artist Pablo Picasso painted his famous representation of the northern Spanish town of Guernica. The Basque town had been bombed by the Nazis and fascist Italy at the request of the Spanish nationalists under General Franco. The painting depicts the brutality and horror of suffering, particularly the suffering of women and children. It is, say critics, one of the most moving and powerful anti-war paintings in history. Of the painting, which is in grey, black and white, and painted on a monumental canvas, Picasso wrote the following: "The Spanish struggle is the fight of reaction against the people, against freedom. My whole life as an artist has been nothing more than a continuous struggle against reaction and the death of art. How could anybody think for a moment that I could be in agreement with reaction and death? In the panel on which I am working, which I shall call Guernica, and in all my recent works of art, I clearly express my abhorrence of the military caste which has sunk Spain in an ocean of pain and death." Today, in places like the Ukraine, artists are creating their own canvases in a similar way that Picasso created his, in the form of visual or oral protests against the Russian invasion, brutal images that show shattered bodies, buildings twisted and collapsed, the sounds of missile strikes that are woven into narratives about people's lives, their survival, and their deaths. Art, whether writing, painting, making films, theatre, dance, all of these are a form of resistance against the cruelty of war and the bleakness of life. And if the tabernacle can teach us one thing, if the presence of our beautiful sanctuary in which we find ourselves here today, and if your engineering feat, Sam, of creating the altar with its 4 horns can teach us one thing, it is the absolute necessity of artistic expression as our claim to integrity, to beauty, to something honest and whole in a broken world. To be able to create something in the midst of war is an act of protest and freedom. It is an act of faith that the seasons will still turn, that spring will emerge from a frozen winter, that a boy or a girl will still fall in love, that calm will fall after a storm, and peace come after a war. These are the things that make our lives better, and these moments, too, of sharing the happiness and blessings of your family, Sam, as you celebrate your bar mitzvah today. In November 2020, in the middle of a lockdown, without a congregation in this sanctuary, we recorded your brother Charlie reading from the Torah and played it as part of the Shabbat morning service with no one, I think, apart from Rabbi Igor and myself in the sanctuary. I hope that in paying tribute to you, Sam, to your determination, your intelligence, your affectionate nature, and the superb way in which you laned for us this morning and led the service last night, we can also today pay tribute to you, Charlie, and a very different, muted celebration that you enjoyed that was nevertheless deeply spiritual.